Hey guys, what's up? It's your boy Deli Andy 14 back with another video today. It's going to be something a little different to what I normally do. It's going to be a list of the Eminem albums in order of my least favourite to favourite. So in this video I won't be using the compilation albums like The Re-Up, Shady XV and Curtain Call. I'm still ill. So before we get into this, like, comment, subscribe just down here. It really helped me out. But in order, we've got Infinite, which was if you likened it to a film, it was a box office disaster. It only sold 1,000 copies when it came out. Totally flopped. And then you've got the Slim Shady LP, which really put him on the scene. The Marshall Mathers LP, the Eminem Show, Encore, Relapse, Recovery, Marshall Mathers LP 2, Revival, and Kamikaze. Now, starting at number 10, I put Encore in there simply because it's not as good as the other albums. While I enjoy a lot of the songs on there more than I do on some of the albums, that's simply because it has more of a comedic value, because he was so high and drugged up literally all the time that he didn't really have any quality control in his product. I think even he's admitted he's disappointed by it now, but I think if he could go back and redo it, it would probably come out completely different if he was how he is now. It's got things like Big Weenie, Rain Man, Ass Like That, all these sort of jokey songs, whereas the previous 3 albums, which were massive commercial successes, were, while he did have some sort of jokey songs, there was 1 or 2, not an entire album full. I mean, you've got Puke on there as well, which is basically the first 30 seconds of him is him throwing you up in a toilet. He went more from his serious sort of rapping to a more joke-filled comedic style, which is fine to try and branch out and do things, but for me it's just, that's why it's at number 10. Number 9, it's Infinite. Infinite is actually a really good album, and I think the only reason it didn't sell as many albums as it did is it didn't have that sort of standout sound, if you know what I mean. He sounded like quite a lot of all the other rappers back in 1996, which is when it came out. And when he moved and got signed with Dr. Dre and brought out the Slim Shady LP, you can notice the difference between the two is drastic. The flow and his sound is just, he found his own sound, his own sort of persona, the Slim Shady persona, which was a shock rap, which really caught people's attention, which is why he blew up. And I think if he'd have brought Infinite out later on, it probably would have come back and been more of a success. But because he brought that out first, it wasn't as well received by customers and fans of music. But if you actually listen to the lyrics, and his flow throughout the entire album is really good. It's quite sort of chilled vibe on the album, and I actually really enjoy it. The only reason it's not higher is it doesn't really have that, for me, the repeat value. Simply also because you can only really get it on cassette unless you download it from YouTube or whatever, which isn't as good quality. Number 8, and this is going to be a shock to some people, is the Slim Shady LP, which is often regarded as one of his best ever albums. That, the Eminem Show, and the Marshall Mathers LP are his 3 best albums. That they're sort of what gave him that legendary status. But it's coming at number 8 just because I do like I said, I love all the albums, but again, it's just not that many. It's one of those ones that I don't listen to that often. simply because I like a lot more of his later songs. Obviously, it's got My Name Is, which is his first ever single, and when he first came into the studio, he just started sort of spitting some random sort of lines, and one of them was "My name is Chicka Chicka Slim Shady," and then they were like, "Well, that's it. That's what we have to have as a single. My name is," and that's how that song came about, just by sort of messing around in the studio, and that is what launched him into sort of superstardom, really. But while it does have like Brain Damage, if I had sort of things like that, it's just not up there for me. I appreciate it and how good it is, and he did a lot of work in between those 3 years, between Infinite and the Slim Shady LP, to refine his art and work on his lyrics and things like that. It's just not that high up for me. It came into the UK charts at number 10, which is pretty decent for, like, if you'd like to call it his proper debut album. Number 7 though, Revival. So again, you'd probably be pretty shocked to see Revival ahead of a Slim Shady LP, but a lot of people in 2017 when it came out were bashing it, and it's actually a really good album when you think about it. They were sort of, I always think of it like this when I talk to people about it. I say, if it was any other artist other than Eminem, would they have bashed it as much? Because he even says it in Kamikaze. He's sort of projected this godlike status among his fans and sort of the rap game, that he is the number one, the greatest, like nobody can touch him. And when you release albums like Slim Shady, Marshall Mathers, and The Eminem Show, everything after that is not as good. It's not going to be as good because you can't keep it up that long. And he says it in, is it The Ringer or The Greatest? I can't quite remember. I think it's The Ringer, where he says, I'm looked at so high that even platinum sales are looked at as a failure. So you earn a platinum rating on an album, that's really good, you know? But that's what Revival got, and people were still saying it was rubbish. Now, obviously, there's the whole thing about, you know, they bought it just because it was Eminem, but in this day and age, you work out quite quickly if something's good or not, and it gets passed around a lot, so he'd have had a lot less sales, I think, if it wasn't actually as good. And I think when you actually, people sort of, they don't take into account the lyrics, and lyrically, it's one of his best albums. The double, triple, quadruple entendres, the way he bends words in that album is actually really good, and just the general message across the whole album is really good. And it's got things like River with Ed Sheeran. It's a great song. A lot of people bash the song with Beyonce, Walk on Water, but that's a really good introspective song about, you know, how he portrays to be this confident, you know, number one guy, when in actual fact inside he's battling a lot of demons, and he's, you know, not as confident as he'd like to think he is. And yeah, it's got Untouchable, which is you know, it's probably one of my least favourite songs of his, but the message in that song is really good, and I think sometimes you just got to listen to the lyrics, you know, a couple, 2-3 times. There's a lot of songs on that which are really good, and it's got a lot of repeat value for me. But moving on to number 6, I've got the Marshall Mathers LP 2, which is one of my favourite albums. It does have some sort of jokey songs like Arsehole, but I really like the way he went. It was the first one since Infinite, I think. Sorry. Oh Jesus, I'm so ill. Since Infinite, which didn't have Dr. Dre producing, I'm pretty sure. And he went to Rick Rubin, who you can tell is a different style to most of the other albums, because it goes more to the old school 80s hip hop, like Berserk. It's obviously got Rap God, which he broke a world record for the fastest amount of words said in a certain amount of time. And it's got just a host of great songs I really love. It's got it's got some jokey songs in. It's got some serious songs like Headlights, where he apologises to his mum. Stronger Than I Was, where he's talking about Kim. I just really love the album, and it's got a lot of repeat value for me. It was one of those ones where after Recovery, I personally have been waiting every year for another Eminem album, and every year we didn't get one. And then when he announced it, I was super buzzed for it, because it just seemed to be, even though it was only 3 years apart, it just seemed a lot longer than that, and it seemed like maybe we weren't going to get another one. Interestingly enough, that every album apart from the Slim Shady onwards has been a #1 album for him, which is with Kamikaze, he broke the record for most consecutive #1 albums. Number 5 is Recovery, which after, again, the sort of failure of Relapse, he sort of came back with Recovery, which was more of a poppy, pop rap kind of album. And obviously his single Not Afraid went straight to #1, which is an absolute banger. But then it's got things like Spacebound, which is massive. It's got, on the Dulux, it's got Session 1 with Slaughterhouse, which is actually a really good song. I only found out about it last year when I was just casually going through his albums, and I realised that I'd missed it off, and I'd not ever heard it before. So there's 2 songs on there which I hadn't heard before, and they were both really good. And it's one of those things where the beats are beats that people are going to listen to more, because it's got that holding value where something sticks in your head. It's got catchy hooks which obviously stick in people's head, and then they listen to it more. And it was a commercial success when it came out, and it sort of really put him back on the map after a 5-year hiatus, and then the sort of disappointment of Relapse to many people. He sort of came back with a bang, which, you know, it's sort of broken up his second half of his career. He's sort of split into 2, really. And I think you can add Relapse. Well, it's sort of more like a third more than 2 halves, really. You've got sort of the first 3 albums, which were his legendary status, and then you've got the 2 in the middle, Encore and Relapse, which was sort of when he was real drugged up and when he was trying to get off the drugs, which were sort of not as well received. And then you've got this third section, which is his next like 5 albums, which are when he's been clean, and you notice a total contrast to the 2 when he started and where he is now, how much better he is. And it really annoys me when people say, "Oh, I want the old M back. I want the old Eminem back." Why? He'd be dead. He wouldn't be here. He'd be dead if he carried on how he was. So yeah, I just think the second half, like, people don't appreciate as much because they always look at the first 3 albums as sort of a marker to try and beat, and it's just not going to happen. It just can't happen, really, because even if it is the best album ever made, they'll be like, "Wow, it's not Slim Shady, it's not Marshall Mathers, it's not the Eminem Show, though, is it?" Number 4 is the Marshall Mathers LP. Now, I was really struggling past number 7 on trying to order these, and when I originally did this video, I started off and I didn't write them down, and I thought, oh, it'll be fine. I'll just sort of go through each album off the top of my head. And I very quickly found out that was going to be quite hard, because there's 10 albums, and yeah, there are a couple which aren't as good as the others, and they're easy to work out. But once you get to 7, it's actually really tough to work out which album you like more, because they're all so good. And I played around with Revival, which is at number 7, and I had that at number 5 for a while. And then I was sort of listening to my own voice inside my head and thinking, well, actually, do I listen to it as much as other ones? And I think that's how I'm basing this off, is what I listen to more, because that's how you know if it's good in your mind, is if you listen to it more. If you don't listen to it as much, it's obviously not as good. So Marshall Mathers LP comes in at number 4, and it's got some absolute bangers on it. Like Kim is one of the most controversial, but also one of my most favourite songs, just because he spends about 3-4 minutes talking about murdering his ex-wife, which, in fairness, isn't a good idea, and I wouldn't advise anyone doing it, but as a premise, and knowing the fact that he isn't actually going to murder his ex-wife, is actually pretty funny. And there's a bit in it where he's screaming, he's like, Kim, why don't you like me? And it just gets me every time on that song. But it has Criminal on as well, and the first verse of Criminal is just absolutely amazing. It's just got, obviously, The Real Slim Shady, which is one of his best ever songs. It's got just loads and loads of top songs, which is why it's so highly regarded. And it is a really good song, but it is a really good album. But me, I'm more into lyrics and things like that, like the intricacies of the flows and the double entendres and things like that, and making words sound different than they actually are. And sort of he did this thing where, famous, you can't rhyme anything with orange, and he said, well, you can. You orange, door hinge, you can rhyme loads of things with it. You just got to bend the words to sound like a different word. And I think in his newer stuff, definitely, his older stuff was more, he was more of a da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da rapper, where he just sort of raps to the flow, and his rhyming was really good. Obviously, Lose Yourself, which isn't in any of these albums, it was on the 8 Mile album, which is a compilation, so it's not in this. That is famous for literally nearly every word rhyming with each other within a sentence, and that is the song that won him his Oscar. And he does that a lot more in his newer stuff than he did in his older stuff. And it's more, the beat sort of takes a back step in his new stuff, which is why I prefer his newer stuff to his older stuff a bit more. Number 3, Relapse, which will probably enrage a lot of people, because a lot of people say, well, Relapse is shit, it's awful, it should be like, 9 or 8, not number 3. You can't put Relapse in top 3 albums for Eminem. It's what, he doesn't know anything. If you listen to Relapse again and you take away, you don't just listen to it, you don't just have it on in the background, you don't just have those, you actually listen to the lyrics. It is lyrically probably his best album. His wordplay, his way he bends words, the way he rhymes things, pulls words out of different areas. You wouldn't expect him to pull a word in, he pulls it in. Lyrically, it's probably his best album, and for me that's why it's in at number 3. Plus, he come off a back of a massive drug fueled few years. He was getting himself clean. He'd had 5 years away. He just bought out Encore. Well, I say just, that was his last album he bought out, so there was a lot of pressure on him to make an album that was as good as the other 3 previous ones before Encore, and obviously they don't match up to it because they can't, but as a comeback album, as well as lyrically, for me that's why it's in the top 3. Again, number 2, there's only obviously 2 left. Then we've got Kamikaze and The Eminem Show. And I'm putting Kamikaze at number 2. When I still remember the day last year it dropped. I woke up out of bed in the morning. I was scrolling through Instagram. I follow Eminem on Instagram. And I saw a plane called Kamikaze with Kamikaze on it. And I thought, he's dropped a new song, or he's going to drop a new song. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. You know, we haven't heard one since Revival. I wonder how well this will be received. So I was looking at the info below the picture, and he said, Kamikaze album out now. And I was like, what the fuck? I literally was like stunned that he dropped an album without any notice. He didn't have any sort of promotion about it whatsoever. He literally made it in secret. Nobody knew about it. He dropped it one day and it fucking went straight to number one. And if that doesn't show you how good Eminem is, then I don't think anything will. Because if anyone else did that, it wouldn't do as well. To drop an album and for it to go straight to number one, that is impressive. And the entire album is just a big fuck you to everyone who trashed Revival. And it's funny because a lot of people were saying, oh, we want something different, you know, it's all the same. So he brings out Revival, which is different. It's more political. It's more, you know, it's something he's not really... And then people go, oh, it's too political, you know, we want the old one back, we want the old M back. And it's like, well, you can't have both. You can't ask him to be different, and then when he is different, you shit on him and ask him to go back to being himself, you know. You got to pick one or the other. And people do forget about Revival, that he actually was pretty political back in his early days as well. It's a thing he's featured throughout his career. So one thing I didn't agree with it, and I don't know why I'm talking about Revival when I'm supposed to be talking about Kamikaze, but he had one with 2 Chainz, and he didn't put it on the album. He put a different version on, and then he released the one with 2 Chainz and Fresher having a verse on as a single. And I think that should have definitely been on the album, even as a second version of it, if it wasn't just the only version. But Kamikaze was just a big fuck you to say, you know what, I don't give a shit what you think. I will do what I want to do, and if you don't like it, at least I know I like it, and I've put it out there, and you know, that takes massive balls to do that. And every song, apart from I'd say Normal, and there's Good Guy, and there's something else, both with Jessie Reyes. There's one of them. There's 2 songs on there which are sort of filler songs. Every other song on that album is absolute fire. The lyrics, the meanings, the double meanings, the triple, quadruple meanings on it, just absolutely amazing. He starts off with The Ringer, which is like a 6-minute song, 5-6 minute song of him just going absolutely in on everybody, every rapper he doesn't like, every single reactor he doesn't like, every single media person he doesn't like. He just goes in on them all, and for me that's why it's at number 2, because it's just a massive fuck you. And just everything about it, the music, the lyrics, just the way he dropped it is just absolutely perfect. And you know, after the Marshall Mathers LP, it was sort of like, well, that could be his last one, because there were hints in it in some of the lyrics that like he might be done. But then he kept dropping singles, and you're like, well, he hasn't bought an album out, but he keeps doing features. Like, is that what he's all going to do now? He's just going to sort of take a step back, do some features, you know, produce a bit more. And then he dropped Relapse, and you're like, okay, yeah, it's decent, it's good. Sorry, not Relapse, Revival. It's decent, it's good, I like it. But is it going to be another 3-4 years before he drops one? He drops one again another year later, and you're like, Jesus, this is amazing. And you just think, he needed Revival to make Kamikaze, because if Revival wasn't shit on as much as it was, Kamikaze never would have existed. Now, that's not to say I agree with the way that they, you know, downplayed Revival, but, you know, I appreciate that because of that, he made this kick-ass album a year later. Here's hoping that, you know, he's doing a lot of features this year, so maybe, you know, an album's in the works for next year or the year after, hopefully soon. But, you know, we'll just have to wait and see. I don't think he's done yet. And coming in at number 1, obviously, is the Eminem Show. It's one that even now, it came out in 2000, It's 19 years. I was 6 years old. Was I 6? Let's see when it came out. I know it came out in 2000, but let's see. Oh no, it didn't. It came out in 2002, sorry. May 26th, so I would have been 7. I was 7 years old when that came out. And when I was old enough to listen to Eminem, and I really sort of delved into him and sort of really got into him, it's just one of my favourites. Business is one of my favourite songs by him. He's got, oh, my mind's gone blank. Superman, another good song. He's got just Sing for the Moment, absolute tune. He's got Without Me, which is an absolute banger. He's just, you know, what can you say about it? Just nearly every... That album is probably the closest he's ever got to having no filler songs in an album. It is absolutely amazing. If I just go down to the track list, so you've got... Oh, sorry. You start off with White America, a political song. Absolute banger. Business, absolute banger. Clean Out My Closet, one of his, you know, best ever songs. He doesn't do it at concerts anymore because he's made up with his mum and he refuses to do it. Square Dance, absolute banger. Soldier, banger. Say Goodbye to Hollywood, it's good. That's probably one of his filler songs. Drips, awesome, with Obi Trice. Without Me, banger. Sing for the Moment, banger. Superman, banger. You've got Haley's song, great. You've got When the Music Stops, awesome. Say What You Want to Say, awesome. Till I Collapse, one of my favourite songs of Eminem's, is awesome. And you got My Dad's Gone Crazy, which got Haley a Guinness World Record for the youngest rap feature. I think she was like 4, 5 at the time. 4, 5, 6, I don't know. Like nearly every song on that, apart from maybe 1 or 2, is just, you know, perfect. And, you know, maybe there's not even any filler songs in there. It's just my opinion, but that is why it's number 1. And I could listen to this album on repeat for an entire day and I wouldn't get sick of it. It's just absolutely amazing. And I think the Eminem Show, that was the last of his truly legendary albums. And while his ones since then have been great and awesome, they won't ever hit the heights. And none of the future ones, if he does make any, will never hit the heights of that album for me. This is a 27-minute video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'd like you to like, comment, subscribe. This was the first one I've done of sort of an entire artist discography. So I may do some more. Depends how I feel. I quite like sort of a break from just reacting to songs. Gives you guys something different. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe. I've been Deli Andy. See you next time. Stay tuned, stay fresh, guys.